So kia ora and welcome to episode 10 of our 11-part series on industrial hemp throughout July 2020. The NZHIA executive today it takes great pleasure in introducing our panellists for today, Nigel Slaughter from Ligar Polymers and Sam Gray from Bioequitas. It's great to have you here today, and we're looking forward to this topic because today we're covering health, being one of our pillars in the New Zealand Hemp Industries Association, the natural health products, cosmetics, and the wellness industry for cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. So quite a lot to cover there. And we're building, of course, on our conversation that we had on Tuesday with Manu, Mark, and Tara around the medicinal cannabis scheme. So it's really good to have Nigel here, who's going to lead us off. Nigel is also, as Manu was mentioning, runs the technical standards committee of the Medicinal Cannabis Council. So that's really useful in this conversation, I'm sure. So we're looking forward to these presentations. So I'd like to hand over to get us started. Nigel, would you like to take over, please?
All right, so a little bit of an introduction. I'll get the presentation up because then I can cover off what we do and why I'm kind of qualified to talk here. 1 second. Okay.
Right, that's looking good, Nigel, thank you.
All right, so I'm focusing on the global cannabis trends. So a little bit about Ligar. Ligar, we began our R&D in 2011, and what we do is we make smart materials, essentially, that capture specific molecules and manufacture these at lab and pilot and bulk scale, but now making large-scale systems for essentially the purification of extracts and also remediation of things in the environment. But importantly for this conversation, we spent about 5 years now doing research into cannabis and cannabis extracts. And through that journey of, well, let's start off getting all the licenses in place and then starting to figure out how we purify cannabis extracts and then look into how do we potentially separate out those cannabis extracts into valuable components. Most people will be focusing on separating out THC and CBD, but through our conversations and our work, we've been looking at the minor cannabinoids, the terpenes, and some other components in the plant that we know companies are interested in. So, you know, through our work, we get to talk to companies who are thinking about the products they're going to be developing in 2 or 3 years' time, and then developing the methods to get there. So, for us, we're always looking at the future in terms of the polymers, the systems that we're developing. So this presentation today, I thought I'd gather together some of the highlights of the trends in medical cannabis, or not so medical cannabis in general, and what's going on around the world, the types of products that are being developed, things that people are focusing on. And it's not just the products, it's almost the stories behind the products and the quality issues to do with those as well. So I'm going to start off with possibly the duller end of this, which is the legality, the regulation, and transparency. So we've all seen the markets continuing to open worldwide, and each one is being different. And that's kind of important on the product development side because the regulations surrounding each market seem to be different. So it's difficult to make a product that will be compliant, meeting all of the requirements in all of the markets. So most people are focusing on a small number of markets and making sure the products are compliant. Particularly in the US, there are many claims being made around the efficacy of the products, and which may or may not be true. But the regulators there are starting to look more closely at this and saying, well, you need to be able to defend your claims and not sell snake oil. So that's coming. So there'll be, you know, at the moment it feels a little bit like a Wild West, but I think it'll settle down into more of a stable market with, you know, consistent product claims across companies. Well, what's happened is there has been a lack of trust. So, you know, people making claims, companies breaking rules. The wonderfully named, you know, CanTrust company broke a lot of rules and got in trouble for its illegal production of some products. And so there's other companies there saying, well, what are we making, what are we buying? Can we trust these companies? Can we trust these products? And the analytical capability is growing rapidly. around the world. And so for the medical side, you generally need, or you have to have, certificates of analysis to show what's in the products. But that's becoming more of a thing in the consumer products, so the recreational products, where you provide full data, you provide traceability back down the chain, you provide transparency. So brands who want to be trusted are having to do a lot more work to overcome the perception of a cowboy industry, so providing that data. And that's led to the rise of these origin stories and demonstration of ethics, and also the development of brands which focus on those things so that they can become trusted brands. And here, we've always seen within the New Zealand context, there's a potential for a very strong story, origin stories and ethical stories and product quality stories, if only the markets were open to us. Which at the moment they're not, only on the medical side, but we'll come back to that. Rise of the minors, the minor cannabinoids. So at the moment, the focus has all been on, well, it started on THC because that was what everyone knew cannabis to be about, and then CBD. CBD is in everything. The most ridiculous example I saw was CBD toothpicks, which will have zero efficacy in terms of what they're doing, but you put CBD in everything. Wandering around to a coffee shop in Los Angeles, and they'll ask you if you want a CBD shot to add to your coffee for, it was $4 last time I was there, without knowing anything about it. You didn't know how much was going to go in there, but it was just ubiquitous. So CBD is a thing, but over the past probably 2 years, probably 2 to 3 years, CBG has becoming the new CBD. People are growing, developing cultivars specifically for their high CBG content rather than CBD. And we know that there's this full spectrum thing that we can have. It's better to have this full spectrum. But because with all of the research going on, we know the CBC, CBN, THCV, CBD, and then the acid forms of each of these, and each one of these opens up opportunities. Each one of these potentially has different functions in the body, or different levels of efficacy. And even if they don't, so there's certainly good stories that can be told. And it's not just the cannabinoids. We have terpenes, and canflavin hit the headlines, or maybe probably going on 2 years ago now. Canflavin is a flavonoid, present at very, very low levels, very difficult to separate out. But the headlines were that it is 30 times more effective than aspirin at pain relief, which is awesome if you can get it. But it's very difficult to separate out. So there's work going on. There's work going on around the world, and we're doing some of that work, and lots of companies are doing work on the technical side to be able to separate out these components so that they're available to put into products. And they start at the very, very high value ends of possibly putting them into clinical trials to see what they do, or just very high end consumer products. So there's not a huge market at the moment, but there's a massive volume of CBG, high CBG plant materials being grown. The availability of the materials will drive a much broader range of product differentiation, new products coming in that contain CBG. We'll have a look in a minute around what people claiming CBG will be doing. But there's the studies revealing the function in the body, and then there's lots going on. So the academics who are looking at cannabis are differentiating themselves by looking at some of the minor cannabinoids. So the research into minor cannabinoids is growing, and also the kind of interaction with terpenes. And the important thing here is that they are far from being the commodity products. CBD production is relatively straightforward. You can do it in very large volume. There's people growing it in very, very large volumes, very low costs of production, so massive economies of scale. And you've got a question is like, how is anyone coming into the market going to compete with that? Minor cannabinoids are much more difficult to produce, or are being CBG is relatively easy now that the plants have been bred, but they're in much lower volumes, but lower demand. So it's a differentiation factor in it, but it's an area that's growing, and I think minor cannabinoids is going to be probably the future of the growth in cannabis products. So health research, what's backing this up? It's broad and it's vague. So there's lots of data out there, and lots more work needs to be done. The evidence is growing, particularly on CBD, on, say, pain and anxiety, and the kind of anti-inflammatory nature, the anti-tumor nature, and CBGs being shown to have good anti-tumor, also anti-cancer properties, very early stage studies. Potential for treatment of dementia is, well, not dementia, it's dementia symptoms of dementia. And then some of the minor cannabinoids looking at nausea, Crohn's, arthritis, diabetes, muscular dystrophy, and so on. So there's no end of studies being done with lots of early stage results showing promise. And they may be no better than other products that are available, but because of the nature of cannabis being seen to be the clean, green way of getting your health, they'll be rising in popularity. And so, and I think the first thing that will happen is the rise in the full spectrum products that are showing to be high in a particular cannabinoid. So it might be a full spectrum that's high CBC, and CBC has been shown to be good at nerve pain. So people might seek out products specifically for that. We're also going to see how that develops. But I know that the breeders out there are breeding for the minor cannabinoids, and they might only, so something like CBC might only be naturally present. Normally it's say 0.2%, so 0.2 to 0.5%, but people can breed that up to maybe 1 or 2%. You don't need it to be at the 14, 15, whatever 20% that you'd have for CBD and THC. You can have high CBC products when they're only still a minor component, and they'll have that the effect that people are looking for. So this research is growing, and it'll only grow demand for those products as more and more results come out. So large versus small. So this is in terms of looking at scales of production. So there's kind of trends, and so we're working with companies or that are looking at doing massive scale production. And so what's happening is there are lots of companies formed, and they're kind of consolidating, leading to very large scale production facilities. On the flip side, you've got, the question, the smaller producers are going, well, how do we compete with this? And they're going on to the craft side, or focusing on the quality, focusing on provenance, focusing on the origin story, doing all sorts of things to try and compete with the large scale guys. And this is what happens in lots of markets. You've got the initial entrance, and you end up with a large scale mass produced product that's fairly consistent across, but it's not particularly interesting. It kind of feeds the mass market, and then you've got the high end and the higher value products coming from the smaller producers, and that's what we're seeing here. There is an absolutely ginormous diversity in products that and things that people are making, and one of the advantages the smaller companies have is that they can try out a whole range of different formats and be able to switch between formats and launch new products quickly, whereas the larger guys will be tending to be focused on kind of like mass applications. So companies getting into this kind of need to be aware that a product that's trending right now will have gone in 6 months' time. We talked a second ago about the minor cannabinoids and they are very difficult to produce at large scale. The technology is not there yet. They're relatively straightforward to produce at very small scale, but very difficult to do at large scale. So this is where the breeding programs of just, let's breed for high CBG has been done. The others will happen, but it's the actual isolation methods to make those individual cannabinoids is still a work in progress. So what are the delivery mechanisms? So I was talking about the different product formats. So we've got the ones that we're familiar with and having seen in the market. So we've got the gummy bears, which are endlessly popular as an easy way. So the background to this is that it used to be all smoking, and you take the flower and you smoke it. That is still a significant chunk of the market, but by far the fastest growing parts of the markets are for the non-smokers. So the extracts or extracts put into something, or versions of extract being put into products. And so gummy bears, chocolates and cookies are still incredibly popular, and there's kind of no end of combinations and formats that can be used. It'll still be popular there. And this isn't just for the THC side of the thing. This was started off as a THC thing, but people are using this as CBD or full spectrum product delivery. But there are other kind of more interesting trends as opportunities in product delivery. So sports drinks, or drinks in general, has been one where the technology has been developed so that the cannabinoids are mostly come as oils or crystals, which will sink to the bottom. So it's difficult to keep them mixed inside a drink, but the technology has been developed to keep it mixed, fully solubilized in a drink. So sports drinks or other forms of drinks are growing in popularity. Sports recovery is a huge area for CBD in particular, but other cannabinoids looking at that as well. And so this has been kind of one of the rising trends is in the drinks and waters as well. I think that when we looked at, it was probably 6 months ago, looking at where do you get the highest price for your CBD? If you take a 1 ml of CBD, what's the highest price you can get for it? Well, the highest prices were being achieved in bottled water, and where they're putting a very small amount of CBD in there, and charging a much higher price for the water than they normally would. This is a spray, so nebulizers, sprays. So rather than vaping, so it's almost like how some people are using so vaporizers for essential oils, and just putting it into the atmosphere and breathing in, that they're becoming more popular. So vaping had a bit of an issue with some contaminated products, so it's more the illegal products, illegally made products, which were having the problems, but they kind of tainted the whole of the vaping industry. So people were looking for the alternatives, and just essentially breathing in cannabis mist is a thing, and a growing thing. This is a strange one. So this is active sportswear. So embedding cannabinoids into fabrics to deliver them to your skin while you're exercising, to help with muscle soreness and also rapid recovery. It's a surprisingly large and growing area. It seems that it would wear off after not many uses, but it's still a growing area. And it's just indicative of the effort that people are putting into trying to find new ways of delivering. It kind of came out of patches. So patches were a popular way of delivering things for a while. So you've got what was called the soccer mom market. So where people didn't want to be seen to be consuming cannabis. Well, how do I do that? Well, I put it in a patch and put it in a stop smoking patch, and you put it on your skin, and it's an invisible method of delivery. I think those markets where CBD has been around for a long time, they kind of move beyond that to just becoming just another product that you consume. Another one, and the final one I'm going to talk about here, is wine, except it's wine where all of the alcohol's been removed. So there's wine being made in New Zealand at the moment, but where all the alcohol's being removed. Lindauer's got a 0% wine, but wine in California and other places where they're removing all of the alcohol, having cannabis added to it. So just about regulations, just about anywhere you go, you say you cannot mix alcohol and cannabis. Well, people are mixing alcohol-free wine with cannabis, and so that's another interesting product area. Now, the downside to all of this is that currently none of what I've talked about is legal in New Zealand. So all we're allowed is the pharmaceutical grade medicinal cannabis by prescription. So even if we wanted to produce those products for an export market where those products are allowed, that it all has to be produced to the standards required for medicines, which is full GMP manufacturing. I'm sure Manu and Mark and Co were talking about this. So at the moment, Ministry of Health says that they're not going to be checking up on who's bought products off of people you've sold them to. So you could essentially make products here to a medicinal standard, sell it to a company overseas that also manufactures pharmaceutical products, which may also make recreational products, and they would be able to sell your extract or your product into those markets. But you'd still have a very high cost of production here, and you'd have to do all of the compliance work, which is very difficult and expensive. So at the moment, we're very limited on the markets that we've got access to. So all of this product innovation is happening, and it's very difficult for anyone in New Zealand to take part in it, except perhaps on an R&D basis. So a yes vote in the referendum will not help us in the short term, as that's only focused on fresh and dried products and not the extract. So they're talking about, they'll be looking at the extracts in time, but they haven't really put a time frame on when the extracts are going to be allowed, and we don't necessarily know yet what sort of quality standards or what barriers might be put in place around product development and export. So that's a wait and see thing. A vote on the CBD at the UN in early December, so I think it's 3rd and 4th of December is planned, may help. So this is the case. So at the moment, CBD is listed in the UN's Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. So that indirectly led to CBD being added onto our Misuse of Drugs Act and then into the Medicines Act. So if the UN votes to take CBD out of the Single Convention, it doesn't immediately impact NZ law, but if there's enough pressure from the right places, it could lead to a change to the New Zealand law to remove CBD from the Misuse of Drugs Act and the Medicines Act, which would then free it up for the broad range of applications. That's a bit of a wait and see. There's an interesting area at the moment in that the minor cannabinoids aren't included in the Misuse of Drugs Act or Medicines Act. They're not really covered anywhere unless you're making a medical claim. If you make a claim around what a minor cannabinoid was doing, you fall under the Medicines Act. But at the moment, if you have a pure minor cannabinoid, it doesn't really fall under those laws, although within the medical cannabis regulations, it's kind of swept into that, where you've got extracts made from cannabis are kind of covered in there, but it's covered in the regulations, but not necessarily in the law. So there is a case potentially for the minor cannabinoids being made into fully legal products here. And we can still do R&D and develop novel products. So we can be making products here, and we could potentially do the easiest thing on the list of things to do in New Zealand would be to grow cannabis to a standard and export it to a place where you can use that product to manufacture extracts and all the products we've been talking about. That's, of all of the things that we can do, that's the easiest. Still not spectacularly easy, but it's the easiest. And so, but we can be doing the R&D, and we can be doing product development here that can then be manufactured elsewhere, and we can still then have the origin stories about how it's been grown here, and the backstory and the transparency and so on around, a very good high quality product. It just so happens that, for now you might have to manufacture that product overseas. But the good news is, I suppose, is that we can make high value products using hemp seeds and seed husks. There are interesting molecules, interesting product potential within just the seed and husk itself. So it's not all doom and gloom at the moment, and this could be a place that you start and make products out of the oils or the seeds and the husks, establish channels, and then as the market opens up and as we're able to use the minor cannabinoids, as we're able to use CBD, we can start building on existing channels to market. So on this point, Sam Gray is going to be talking around the potential things that we can be making out of hemp legally within New Zealand.
Right, awesome, Nigel. Thank you very much for that really in-depth roundup of the whole situation. And as you pointed out right at the end there, we do have some opportunities to get started and prove some of our understandings. And I mean, hemp seeds are pretty busy as well. There's quite a lot happening in hemp seeds, as we're about to find out. But that sets us up well. I will just, before we get started on Sam's presentation, Sam, if you could just hold fire just for a second, because there was a couple of questions that have come up that I'd like to just take care of now. Rob's come in. The first one, Nigel, it was, what does the V mean with THC and CBD V?
Variant. It's a just a tag on. It's just a slightly different molecular structure. It's VARIN. So it's just another description for the molecular structure. It just means that, so if it was CBDV, it's essentially CBD with a different functional group on the molecule.
Well, just as you were starting to get your head around just the 3 letters, they introduce another V, right? All good. Rob's also asked about what parts are good for pain relief, but it rolls into another question as well. How does industrial hemp fit into that spectrum regarding pain relief in particular?
Yeah, so pain relief at the moment, the evidence is, let's say it's foggy on where the CBD is having the effect or whether it's something else. And most of the pain studies have been done on CBD isolates. So you take your extract and then you pull out the CBD and you only test the CBD. And it seems that that is effective by itself in some cases. When the studies include a broader range of molecules, there are more positive results on pain, and it comes down to the type of pain as well. So for example, there's evidence of CBC on nerve pain, whereas CBD wouldn't be affecting nerve pain. So there's variations. I think it's building, and then that cannabiflavin, the flavonoid, has shown very good efficacy on pain as well, but very limited studies because it's very difficult to make and get. So it's coming. I mean, I sat in the select committee meeting way back when we were originally talking about cannabis, and there were pain specialists presenting to the select committee who were saying there is no evidence for, in their blind studies that they've done, there's no evidence for efficacy of CBD on pain relief. I think since then there have been studies that come out that say that it's not as conclusive as everyone believes it should be, because I think most people who have the experience of pain relief have been smoking or taking a full spectrum extract and not looking particularly just at the CBD. So I think it's coming. I know that in America they've commissioned studies looking at the full spectrum products on pain. So I think there will be more work coming out. There's excellent work being done. I think it's just a little bit of a wait and see.
Thank you, Nigel. And you're right about the studies are just starting to get started now, aren't they, in the last sort of 20 or 30 years with this easing of the regulatory environments around the world. Because, of course, during Prohibition, no one was doing any work in this space. So it will take a while to catch up to the degree that the medical people will be comfortable as far as prescribing and things. So lots of issues there. But thank you very much, Nigel.
There's a part B to that, which was where does industrial hemp fit in this?
Yes.
It fits in very well. In that all of the molecules we're talking about here are equally present in industrial hemp as they are in the kind of the more, we call the medical varieties. They've just been bred for higher levels in the medical varieties, so you get the same spectrum of products. If you, on the industrial hemp side, if you don't let it go to seed, you keep it as a flower, your compulti, we've been measuring them at, say, 8% CBD, so maybe 99% total cannabinoids compared to 15%. So there's certainly potential there for making products, very good products from industrial hemp. It's just harder to get to the concentrations, but the technologies are here, and one of our technology looks at the isolation of the cannabinoids from extracts, so you can be making products from industrial hemp. It's just probably easier to bring in the cultivars. I guess once you've learned how to grow hemp properly, then you can look at bringing in the cultivars that are higher in the cannabinoids. But I think the techniques for growing one will be the same as the other.
And that leads to that question around the breeding side, a huge part that New Zealand has a lot to offer in that space if we can get ourselves started.
Yeah, I mean, there's this huge potential around, and it's something that we've kind of been looking at and saying, what does the high UV do? What does geographical location, what difference does that make to different cannabinoids? And the limited stuff that we've been saying is that you know, the cultivars growing if they're growing in California or wherever, or Nevada, and you bring them here, they look different. So it should be the same, but they're coming out with different profiles. So there's some interesting work to be going on with around, well, just understanding what different the climate and the UV makes.
Yeah, our environment. Okay, right. But Sam, we're very excited to have you do your presentation as well. So sorry for the delay there, but if we could hand over to Sam and let's take a deep dive into the products that we can get involved with.
All right, I'll just bring up my my presentation. There we go. Okay, hi everybody. I'm Sam Gray. I'm the Managing Director of Bioequitas, and we are a full-service consultancy to the natural health products industry, and I'll talk just briefly about us right at the end. But I'm going to kick this off, and this discussion is about the natural health market opportunities for hemp. Yeah, how do we change? There we go. So what am I going to present about? I'm going to present about hemp seed as a functional ingredient for supplements, foods and cosmetics. And just to remind everybody, the currently permitted uses of hemp seed is the seed only, seed and seed ingredients. And there are some requirements within the food standards that the THC level be very low, the CBD level be very low, and that no mention or claims for CBD or any mention of cannabis, marijuana can be made, and no imagery of a cannabis leaf. So it's all about the nutrients that are in the seed, as opposed to the sort of the medical type bioactives is what's permitted under the regulations in New Zealand at the moment. So what is this presentation not about? It's not about whether or not CBD should be permitted in foods and dietary supplements and other products. And so if anyone has queries about products they're developing or have to market and things like that, then my advice is to seek some professional advice on those, and we can help you if you want us to. It's also not a discussion about what's happening overseas compared to what's happening here. That's already been discussed. So just to frame that up. So, I mean, hemp, I'm still excited about hemp because a hemp seed is packed full of nutrients. And we shouldn't forget this. There's an abundance of omega-rich oils, protein, fiber, and a whole bunch of other micronutrients, bioactives, polyphenols, and as Nigel said, the unique terroir of New Zealand with our high UV and how our agricultural practices and climate means that potentially we have an advantage in the hemp produced here. The other part of this is our provenance. New Zealand does, whether or not it's 100% this way, but we do have a perception of being clean and green. And we also have a very strong history of agriculture with family farms in abundance, and a strong authenticity. And these are really important pieces to the package that hemp ingredients are for developing products that we can take to the world. So I just want to talk about a couple of mega trends that are still in play, because these do really speak to hemp, and plant-based is still huge and growing. So that's really important because that is hemp. Naturally functional is really important to consumers. They want to have something that is going to provide a benefit, but they want a natural benefit. And hemp seed ingredients can provide those benefits. They also want clean label, sustainable, and hemp's fantastic there. And as I've just discussed about the authenticity and provenance of our New Zealand farming practices, that is a great story to back up any hemp products that could be developed. So underneath those overarching mega trends, if we look at the natural health market, you can segment that into a few different product classes: dietary supplements, functional and fortified foods and beverages, and sometimes it's very difficult to actually tell whether a product is a dietary supplement or a functional food. And that can actually differ in different jurisdictions as well. What might be clearly a dietary supplement in New Zealand could be a food in another country, and vice versa. So that's important to understand. Food intolerance products are still big, gluten-free, and so hemp can play into that. And then the other category is the personal care products, your skin care and that sort of thing. And so all of you experts in hemp will see that there are hemp seed ingredients that can have applications in all of those segments. And then if we just look at some of the functional segment trends that around the world, the big segments in this area, they continue to be nutritional oils, with fish oil leading the way, but clearly hemp oil has, can play a role in this segment. Joint products are still huge. Immunity is still huge, and I will get to that shortly, and also gut health. So those are sort of your traditional large segments, but then functionally the other growth segments we're seeing are brain and stress and sleep, and of course it would be fantastic to be able to have CBD products to market to address those functions, but we can't here in New Zealand. However, there are other functionalities within hemp seed that could address these key growth segments, and indeed many other ingredients successfully address these growth segments. Healthy aging is huge, and sports nutrition is having a bit of a resurgence actually, which is great for hemp protein in particular. Beauty from within is a growing segment with things like collagen and those sorts of ingredients, but hemp seed ingredients can also play there. And then immunity and general wellness, and prebiotics and probiotics, and the hemp fiber can be an important ingredient in the prebiotic area. And then just moving on from what Nigel was talking about with format, and he had some great images of some pretty cool formats there. It's important to understand what the drivers for format are for consumers, and there has been a talk about pill fatigue in the supplement segment for some time, and that is continuing with consumers wanting more of a natural format. So powders are actually seeing a resurgence, that people would rather actually muck around with powders than take a capsule or tablet. Other drivers for formats include convenience, and then also wanting to be environmentally friendly and clean label. They don't want to have too many excipients and tableting aids and things like that in their products, and novelty. So examples are the gummies, of course, which is a huge thing in the CBD area, but also in other areas, immunity in particular and beauty are both segments that where the gummy format is very popular. Beverage shots, and we've all seen a lot of products come to market recently in that area, and that's an interesting sort of food supplement interface. Butters, which is a novel way to present functional ingredients, so a spreadable offering that has a health benefit to it. And then stick packs and sachets for convenience. But traditional formats are still very strong, because you can't actually get away from your tablets and capsules, even if you wanted to, because in some of these other formats, it's not possible to introduce an appropriately evidence-supported dosage of some of the nutrients, and also you do run into quite a number of stability issues when formatting health benefit ingredients or dietary supplement, functional food type ingredients into more of a food format or a liquid format, some stability issues can come up. So the traditional tablets, capsules and powder offerings are still very strong and certainly shouldn't be discounted. So when thinking about hemp seed ingredients and new product developments, one approach is to look at those mega trends, the plant-based, the provenance, what consumers are looking at overall in a product, and then try and dial into some of the segments underneath that, the functional segments such as nutritional oils, joint, sleep, those sorts of things, and then look at formats that may be appropriate to give you an edge in the market or for that particular product. And the other thing I think is quite important is to consider combination products that meet functional needs, because we can't do the CBD products here. However, the functionality that CBD brings in a dietary supplement offering that you would see in the US, for example, there are other ingredients that can give that some of that functionality. And so a combination of a hemp seed ingredient with other functional ingredients can create an offering that can address that trend in the marketplace. And then the other part of that is to look at how the nutrients inside hemp seeds can enhance the functionality of other ingredients. So you're looking at perhaps a traditional joint type product, and can the hemp seed oil add something to that, or the micronutrients in the hemp seed add something to that to create a new offering. So it's thinking about really more than just hemp seed oil, or more than just hemp seed protein, or more than just hemp seed fiber. How can other ingredients, other formats enhance the qualities of hemp to create a new product offering? And here I've just pulled off a whole bunch of hemp products. Many of you will be familiar with these sorts of offerings. This is just straight off Amazon. And so you can see that there's everything from beard butters to the butter that you put on your toast, and hemp hearts, hemp powders, personal care, that sort of thing. But I don't think any of these are actually that exciting. So I think that taking the basis of what's on the market and creating something beyond that, using perhaps other New Zealand ingredients that would marry up with hemp and things like that, could be a really interesting way to capitalize on the trend for hemp. And then I just wanted to move on to branded ingredients, because it's important to consider a branded ingredient as a way of developing a new product. So this is a B2B branded ingredient that then is sold to manufacturers of finished goods in the functional food and dietary supplement, personal care area. And so developing a branded ingredient offering is one way to take a product to market globally. So these are just some points about successful global branded ingredients. Have a strong focus on IP, whether or not that's patents, trade secrets. Certainly trademarks are very important, and they need to be supported by evidence for function, and also safety data. And there's two reasons for that. Firstly, so that they are safe and efficacious, and secondly, to satisfy the regulatory requirements of international markets. And they do need to be priced appropriately, because it's a B2B raw material offering going into export markets. But it really is a way to develop like an enduring product offering that can really go global. And there's a couple of examples of very well-known branded ingredients that you may be familiar with in your own kitchen cabinet. So Kyolic aged garlic, Ester C, and Life CHA. So I do think that this is something to consider, so that it's not just another hemp product that you may be selling. You may develop a branded ingredient that really is differentiated. And then I just wanted to move on to claims, because we're talking about products with health benefits here, and so it is really important to consider claims carefully, because foods and cosmetics have a very limited ability to make health benefit claims. Foods have some health benefit claims permitted under the FSAN's Food Standards Code, but they are quite limited. And dietary supplements and cosmetics can make health benefit claims, but they cannot be therapeutic purpose claims. And this is really important to keep in mind. So claims such as anti-inflammatory are not permitted for a dietary supplement, let alone a food. And so when developing a health benefit proposition for your product, it's important to consider what claims you want to make and make sure that they're going to be compliant, not only in the domestic market, but whichever global markets you want to take that product to. And it's also really important to ensure that your product is classified correctly, because the food dietary supplement interface is becoming quite blurred. So is it a food or is it a dietary supplement? Because different regulations and different labeling requirements apply. And in fact, when you're developing a product, you may want to consider which path you go down, because there may be advantages or disadvantages for each, and some products could be one or the other, and so it's important to make the choice that's going to give you the best opportunity in the market. And just a final point, that any claims that you make, you do have to have evidence to support those claims, even though there's not an explicit requirement in our regulations to hold evidence or submit evidence. You must have that evidence, because otherwise, if you're making spurious claims without evidence, that's in breach of the Fair Trading Act. Just a word about COVID-19. So COVID-19 has seen a massive spike in the immunity segment, which it wouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And all of the leading market analysis companies are predicting that immunity and general wellness is going to grow in double-digit growth through 2021, and I think we could probably assume beyond then, which is a fantastic opportunity. But be careful, because rogue players are making spurious claims. They're adding antiviral, immunity, all sorts of things to products, and regulators are monitoring this space closely and taking action. And also online platforms are actually withdrawing products making these claims, because they don't want to be liable for these sorts of claims either. So that's just something to keep in mind, because hemp seed ingredients could offer benefits in immunity, but if you are going to develop an immunity product or make an immunity claim for a hemp seed product, you must have evidence to support it and make sure that those claims aren't claims about COVID-19. So just as we know, globally the CBD market is very hot, and it is quite wild at the moment. And just to reinforce what Nigel was saying, that in New Zealand CBD is a prescription-only medicine. However, because of the hotness of the market globally, consumer consciousness is right up there, and acceptability of CBD or any cannabis-based products is growing. And so I think this is a really great opportunity for hemp seed products to tap into this consumer consciousness, but in a way where the products are standing on their own, legitimately in the market, compliant with the regulations. So I think it's an opportunity. Although a lot of people are feeling like we're being held back by our regulations, there is also a significant opportunity there as well. And so just finally, a little bit about BioEquitas. Who are we? We're a full service and award-winning consultancy that helps natural health businesses to grow, and we offer a wide range of services and new product development, right from concept right through to commercialization, a full suite of regulatory affairs services, We are an approved research provider by the IRD, which means that you can access the R&D tax credit without having to spend $50,000 minimum on R&D. And we're part of Callaghan Scale Up. We also offer technical troubleshooting, due diligence for mergers and acquisitions and things like that, governance and advisory boards. So yeah, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. And there's my contact details if you'd like to make contact.
Awesome, Sam. Thank you very much. And that really just speaks to this whole point of, yes, we, many of us are unhappy about the current state of the regulations, clearly, why can't we have access to CBD, that sort of thing. But you've pointed out to us that we can get busy in this space. We can get all our relationships underway with people like yourself in that consultancy area, get the R&D community involved. Lots of us can, do a lot of work and be eyeing up those export markets. So we don't have to sit and wait. And that hemp seed is just, I think people just don't quite know some of the inherent qualities and how exciting that's going to be in the future once those studies come out. Again, back to our providence and story around New Zealand as well, because what does it mean to have hemp seed grown in New Zealand? And so who does that sort of, all those studies? And are they...
Well, there is a lot of data on some of the components in hemp seed already, the protein, the omegas and things like that. So, and the fiber. So there's plenty of scientific data that will enable a product to be developed, or a myriad of products actually, that can go to market and have enough evidence to support health benefits. So that isn't a problem. And I think it's a great opportunity because in the US alone, the dietary supplement market's something like $50 billion worth. So, if you can take a small piece of that, and it's a much lower barrier to entry than a medicinal market, because the requirements for manufacture and all of that sort of thing, and registration and regulatory hurdles aren't as high, although there still are some. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity, even to generate cash flow, in order to then take that once those regulations if they are going to change in the future. Yeah.
Right on. And an important thing, cash flow is king. So using that, and I mean, what do hemp businesses do with cash flow? They reinvest it into the hemp industry. So it's just a great way to get started. Sam, if I could ask you to stop the screen share, and then we'll invite Nigel back as well to join us on the video. Because that was the interesting thing you were saying around the B2B and that branded ingredients and that's differentiation. Because we've been talking a little bit of the theme this month has been around moving ourselves from commoditization into a branded product going offshore. And you're saying as well that you could actually have a branded ingredient going offshore.
Absolutely. I mean, there are many branded ingredients. Actually, New Zealand's got a few examples themselves, and some ingredients out of greenlet mussel and kiwi fruit and things like that are those branded ingredient offerings where it's a unique offering. It has a trademark name. It's backed by evidence, backed by safety studies, and so forth. And that really does enable people to take product globally, because you're engaging with other businesses in a B2B way, and so you can get your product into many different markets, many different products within one market, even competing against each other, and still enables you to launch your own consumer brand if that's something that you want to do as well.
Ultimately, yeah. So the scale would be an important part of that, but at least you're adding some value as well. So you are differentiating, even though you're just about being in that commodity end of the spectrum.
Well, it's not a commodity market. These are high value ingredients because they're backed by evidence. They're backed by safety. They have intellectual property either in the way of patents or trade secrets or what have you. So they're not commodity at all. These are ingredients that command a premium in a B2B way versus the commodities that come out of some of the other markets, such as China and India and what have you. So these are the ones that have got a high quality and high value proposition, and they do command a premium. And when it comes to the retail products that use these branded ingredients, they'll often demonstrate on pack that it contains you know, for example, Kyolic Garlic is a trademarked name you'll see on pack, which gives consumers confidence and gives the brand a way of differentiating themselves as well. And those products will command a premium in that space. So I think that's why I wanted to highlight that, because people often overlook the branded ingredient category as a valid way to get their products to market.
Yeah, and there's considerable value add in there. And,
yep.
and what with the IP, you know, that's another interesting thing. And of course, we're all trading on that clean green image, but New Zealand has a great image in that space. So I was really happy to see that post-COVID slide as well. Thank you, Sam, for bringing that up, because what is the new normal and this immunity side and the things that New Zealand inherently do. And it's wonderful to see our primary industries getting the recognition that they deserve as well. And that's something that we look at from the hemp side of view because of the value chain that it goes across. You know, we've been talking about food, you've introduced the natural health products, the cosmetics, all of these other, you know, these other sectors have great support. You know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The Natural Health Products Association is amazing. They're really supportive of their members, as is the Cosmetics New Zealand. So,
Yes.
you know, there's people out there that have the wherewithal to help us to develop the hemp side of things as well. So, and encouraging our hemp businesses. And the other one I'd like to ask you both about is, you know, New Zealand, other New Zealand bioactives. You know, to really, I mean, that would enhance the story, wouldn't it? Really?
Yes. Well, I mean, like, I don't want to, you know, give away all the cool ideas on a webinar, but I mean, I think there are some fantastic New Zealand ingredients that you could pull together to meet some of those those segments that are hot or that are just the big ones, and develop some really cool, you know, from New Zealand with a great story behind it, offering. Yeah, why not?
Absolutely, and when you mention those segments, and they're so large, you know, I think that's what we miss in New Zealand. We've got to think big. You know, we've got, you know, these are a global niche market. Sounds small, but actually, that niche market for a New Zealand manufacturer is absolutely huge.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to add anything onto that one, Nigel?
No, I mean, we don't just do cannabis. I mean, we look at, you know, a big part of our work is looking at natural extracts and more efficient ways of coming up with more specific extracts rather than having a broad spectrum extract or a, you know, you're really focused down. And we're currently investigating waste streams. So we're looking at you know, what great New Zealand products do we have and how do we get more value out of those? Because a lot of the time the waste streams are the skins of the fruit or whatever, and generally the bioactives or they kind of concentrate in the skins.
Yeah, and you know, consumers love that. I mean, it's a massive consumer trend to be using, to be so environmentally conscious. You're using all of the plant or all of the animal, and so if you've got something that's coming out of a waste stream, I mean, a few years ago people would think that was a lower value offering, but now it's actually what, you know, it's what consumers want. Yeah.
And in a strange way, I mean, you know, we've got a real problem with the agricultural compounds veterinary medicine side that said that we're not allowed to feed it into animals, both as a fodder crop for production animals or even for companion animals. So they've really nailed us, you know, quite badly there, and we have to work through that. But it has, you know, then the market has to focus on, well, how do we use our byproducts for a human market, which is a better market to be in as far as returns go.
I mean, it's a higher value market, so why not?
Yeah, and an interesting one around, you know, hemp seeds are a Class C drug, so you need a license to process hemp seeds until they become, as you said on your slide, dehulled. But then you've got two parts, and you know, from my observations and use of the plant overseas, you know, the seed is a great little structure that stores it very, very well. But because we have to split them up, now we've got the husks. So what is it about husks and the fibre in there? And then do we have to reconstitute them in some format as well, back to formats?
Yeah, we find the husks, I mean, there's kind of we're looking across everything, but one of the things we've kind of looked into is, well, what is in the hemp seed husks apart from the fibre? Because all husks have interesting things in them. They're just performing a function, and you know, the things that are naturally in the plants there are generally performing a role of being protective, so anti-insect or anti-something, and they will then have a function in the body. So we've looked at the seeds, and there are interesting things in the seeds which are not cannabinoids and considered classed as foods. So there's options open to us to look at the extracts from the husk, which still provide the fiber. So you'll end up splitting that into two streams. You've got the fiber stream and the extracts stream. Now, what it requires is some companies to stand up and say, I want to make something out of that, and come, justify, look at the function of that and what does that stuff do, and then say, well, here's a product that we can legally make within New Zealand, and it could be really interesting.
And the hemp fiber itself, I mean, fiber is part of that gut health category. Prebiotic, probiotics are big, have been for ages, well, for a while. Prebiotics are now growing. Prebiotic is the food for the probiotics. You need to have a good prebiotic there so that you can have a great source for any probiotics you're going to take, but also for your natural microbiome to flourish. And there you've got, in the hemp seed fiber, there we have a fiber. So that's fantastic. What can we do with that?
And it comes down to the story you want to tell. I mean, it started off as a relatively low value thing, or the only thing that we could sell through to, and it's sometimes difficult to change your lenses and say, actually, it's no longer this side byproduct that we're trying to sell off cheap. It's actually got significant value, and when we sell it on that value. And then the backstory, I mean, New Zealand's never had a better image in the world than now. And so some of this product from New Zealand with this function, the prebiotic, whatever it is, there's as much effort going into the story as there is into making the product.
Yeah, and there are a number of branded ingredient offerings that are fibers actually. So it's like you were saying just then, Nigel, it being very perceived up until recently as a very low value waste product. Well, it actually could be a high value ingredient as a branded ingredient.
Yep.
It's about telling the story then.
It's understanding what it is, and at the moment you just go in and say, oh, I wonder who's going to buy this, through to actually discovering ways of using it, and then saying, well, this actually has this value, and then all you're doing is telling a story of that value.
Right, and this is what we were trying to achieve with these webinar series, is get people to ask the better questions by having a bit of information, because people listening today and watching this at their leisure on a recorded version will have those light bulb moments now, and they'll be able to say, oh wow, I'm interested in that, let's explore that. And there's people in New Zealand that can help them explore it. I mean, those networks and ecosystems exist, and funding for a lot of this as well is available in some cases.
There's very strong extraction, product formulation, food product formulation capability within New Zealand. It's a very good place to be doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
It's everyone knows, I mean, the usual advantage of everyone knows each other. So once you start on that journey, you can make progress very quickly and find the right people very quickly.
Yeah. And that's the exciting thing. Sorry, Nigel, but it did come out on Tuesday around, workforce, preparing our workforce for the future, because there's just huge numbers of, I mean, we've got a lot of food technologists already, but there's going to be a requirement for so many more, and on all levels of this sort of activity, on farm, off farm, all the way through to marketing.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at the industry of growing. The science of high value crops is huge. So it's not just about the processing. It's you can be very smart in the growing of it, selecting of plants, selecting parts of plants, whatever it is. There are things that you can be doing to rather than chasing maybe 5% more extract, you can do a lot of work up front and then get that level up massively just by being smart about the farming. So there's investing in that will have a major impact here.
Yeah, and people will recognise where where their skill set sits, or their investment should be, where their interest lies. And I think the other thing that I just wanted to touch on briefly, and I appreciate that we're going over a little bit of time, and I don't really want to end on a negative note, but I look at this and I'm really wrapped with hemp, because it's, the inherent qualities are so amazing. We've talked about the seed and we've talked about minor cannabinoids, terpenes and flavonoids as well today, but people are coming on, unstuck with synthetics, seems to be, what should New Zealand be doing? Should we be doing anything? I mean, we want to be growing this product. So is there room? Should we be worried, or it's...
it's just like any other ingredient. There's synthetic vanilla. You know, if we're talking about food ingredients, do we worry about synthetic vanilla versus normal vanilla? Well, most people go the natural extract, and you allow people to shop for what they want. As long as there aren't kind of negative impacts on the health, you know, sometimes you can have different impacts than you're expecting, or you can have negative impacts. So as long as we're not having those, I think, well, as Sam was saying, the trend is definitely in the natural direction. So I don't think we should be too concerned, because people want the natural rather than the synthetic. But in some cases, if it's it's a low value component in a low value ingredient, where you're going to go, well, you know, you're looking at your E numbers anyway. You can make your choice there. I think most people just ignore it.
Yeah, I think it's probably more a case of being more worried about the cheaper hemp ingredients and products coming from elsewhere is more of a worry when we're talking about hemp. And so that's why bringing in all of everything about New Zealand hemp, which is the provenance, the family farm story, which I don't think we talk about enough other than on Country Calendar, but we need to be saying that in our products, because you know, internationally, that's what consumers want, the story behind their products nowadays. So that and then building in things such as branded offerings, whether they're retail ready products or ingredient products that are supported with IP, with studies for health benefits or efficacy, and if safety if needed. That is the way to not be worrying about commoditized you know, hemp ingredients out of China or somewhere like that. That's the take-home message from me, I think.
A wonderful take-home message as well. Thank you, Sam. And yeah, I think it's just going to be a very, very interesting journey, because, of course, you know, back to the safety of these products, you know, heat, light and air are really disastrous for our hemp oil. So, you know, our packaging's got to come up to speed, and we don't want to get anybody poorly. I mean, somebody takes some oil and it's rancid, and it's like, well, that person's not going to buy oil again. So we've got an education element in all of this as well. You know, we've come a long way in that space. I mean, people don't normally say to me so often now, am I going to get high by eating hemp? And you know, so we've come a long way in that space, but there's still a lot of work to do, because as we discussed, I mean, from a food point of view, the market hasn't really picked up on hemp seed foods, but in the cannabinoid sense, you know, you look at some of the studies coming out of America, where, you know, 50+% of people know what CBD is. That's pretty effective. And I think, you know, from my activism side, I would say that's because these products work without, you know, making all the claims, or without having all the data that I need to back that claim up with. I think that's probably why people are using them and drawn to them, that natural element as well, that sustainability that was being discussed too. So the story and the fact that these products work without disastrous side effects associated with opioids and things like that, it's got to be good news for our whole industry once we get the studies to support that presumption or saying or assumption. But as we've gone over, and I thought out of all the episodes, this one was the one that was likely to go over, not just because you guys are talkative, but it's just the content as well. It's just such a wonderful and interesting commentary that you've both been able to add to this topic. And there will be a need to go deeper into this, and that's where the expo and the summit in May 2021 Rotorua is going to be so important. And it'll be great to have sort of products there at the expo, so really, and the networking opportunities, because it's about getting together with other people in our ecosystems and getting them involved in our plans and desires and things. So it's just very, very interesting. So in conclusion, I'd just like to thank Nigel Slaughter from Ligo Polymers and Sam Gray from Biocrisis for your time this morning. It's been wonderful having you on, and we look forward to hearing from you again shortly.
Thank you. And
thanks guys.
For listening.